giving you the information you need. This is Inside the News. Here's Guy, Ben, and Frank.
Welcome back to our third segment, our Picking Up the Pieces segment, and this could be almost a whole segment in itself of Inside the News. You can find us on our affiliates across the country and also YouTube channel WBV Inside the News. Okay, Frank, North Korea, they still will not give up this threatening behavior and posture, Frank.
Yeah, some interesting developments. The mountain where the North Koreans have tested their nuclear weapons, now it turns out there's two dangers emanating from that. One, the mountain might collapse and causing landslides not only on the mountain itself but in the entire region. Indeed, it abuts an area of China where there's I guess the equivalent of our national parks. China has now closed off that area to tourists because of the danger. But number two, geologists are now saying that since the latest North Korean test was approximately 100 kilotons, that might be enough to actually change the magma chamber underneath the mountain. It's a dormant, not an extinct, but a dormant volcano, which could actually cause a volcanic eruption. And some wags have been saying perhaps the volcano could take care of North Korea, where the rest of the world is refusing to act. So the issue is getting to be more and more dire. The fact that North Korea continues to lob missiles over Japan shows they feel no sense of restraint whatsoever, no fear of any international action whatsoever. And it's going to continue to get worse. I think Shinzo Abe has been making more and more noises that Japan is ready to abandon its peace constitution, and clearly the provocations are astounding at this point. It would be surprising if some changes aren't made.
You know, Ben, McMaster is becoming more and more vocal about the military option, and even if they try and address a question outside of that realm, he brings it right back into that, doesn't he, Ben?
Well, he does, and he is trying to, as the president did in the UN earlier today, make it very clear that we do have a military option and we're willing to use it in the right circumstances. However, my issue I have, and where I urge the Pentagon and the president to take corrective action, is no one will take, and when I say no one, the two countries that matter are North Korea itself and China. No one is going to take our military options seriously until we begin to move heavy units into the region, specifically onto South Korean soil, but at a minimum into staging areas, be it Guam, which is pretty far away, more likely major areas outside of ports like Yokohama in Japan. If we move heavy units, heavy first-line military units like the 1st Armored Division into the South Korean peninsula, that is the scenario under which people will take serious our preparations for military action. And I don't think we'll ever see the Chinese do anything different than what they have unless they are convinced we are headed towards a preemptive strike against North Korea and the destruction of the North Korean regime. There are other areas where we can bring pressure to bear on the Chinese to act. Japan is the most sensitive. Anyone who knows the history of the Japanese occupation of China during the 30s through 1945, the brutality that the Japanese inflicted on the Chinese people, the rape of Nanking just being one example where 300,000 Chinese civilians were systematically tortured and killed and raped. There is hatred and fear of the Japanese all throughout China, and it's fairly well deserved, I hate to say it. But that is a leverage point. If we came out and supported a change in the Japanese constitution to allow for a true military to be rebuilt, if we floated the concept of providing Japanese with their own nuclear deterrent, since they are clearly in the crosshairs, and Kim Jong-un has talked about destroying Japan the way the Iranian mullahs talk about destroying Israel, if we go in that direction, that is a scenario the Chinese might start to change their opinion and actually truly exert their influence to change the path that North Korea is on. That is the only peaceful way out of this. It is the only peaceful way, but we have to get far more aggressive and bold in forcing the Chinese hand. Otherwise, the only way to end this will be military action. And again, I go back to the fact that if we're going to preemptively strike North Korea, we will need more heavier units inside South Korea ready to strike. Because once war starts, yes, in the early moments, hopefully we will remove the nuclear threat and the nuclear program as long as it stays relatively small like it is now through targeted strikes, maybe even tactical nuclear strikes. But we will, at a minimum, face a conventional North Korean army that will be shelling South Korea, Seoul, South Korea, and that has to be rooted out of the mountains that they're embedded in through conventional forces. So we have to up our force strength in South Korea to make the military threat a viable one that the world respects.
Okay, Frank, just like North Korea has threatened Guam and Japan, Iran is doing much the same thing now with Israel about Tel Aviv and Haifa, that they just want to flatten them out as well. And it's like, okay, I see you, brother, doing this, and now we're going to do it over here in the Middle East. And these two are so linked, it's getting to be scary.
Guy, you hit the money right on the nose. The fact of the matter is, this goes back, by the way, to a policy during the Obama administration. You might recall for the first time since World War II, the Obama administration rejected the concept of an American military sufficiently powerful to fight a two-front war, a war in two separate theaters altogether. As the North Korean situation becomes more and more dire, Iran becomes more and more emboldened because they truly believe, and they've read the tea leaves and they've looked at the defense budget, that the United States does not have the capacity to wage war in two theaters at the same time. So what's happening in North Korea, as American forces need to be built up there, the Iranians believe they have a free pass to do whatever they want in the Middle East. It doesn't hurt, by the way, that the Iranians have been supplied by the Russians with the S-400 missile system, which is an effective air defense system. It doesn't hurt that the Iranians and the Russians have a foreign policy in that part of the world, which essentially dovetails with each other. The weakness of the American military is the basic concept that is really promoting promoting danger in both the Korean Peninsula as well as in Iran, as well as in other places around the world. Until we get our military back to where it's supposed to be, you're going to have a lot of adventurism going on. Now, today, of course, or I believe yesterday, the Senate approved, I think it was a $700 billion defense bill, which, while certainly an improvement over the Obama era, doesn't really make up for the years and years of neglect of our armed forces. That's going to take a while to undo, and until it's undone, we're going to see a lot of perilous situations cropping up by nations that simply don't fear America the way they did in the past.
Okay, Ben, I know you have a comment on this.
Well, look, Iran is led by mullahs. They're Shiites. They're Twelvers. Iran is led by an absolute dictator, Ali Khamenei. He is a mullah. When he dies, he'll be replaced by a similar thinking mullah. And they have absolute power over the foreign policy of Iran, and they view themselves in the ascendancy in the Middle East and on an apocalyptic mission to bring about the return of the Mahdi. That is their goal. They are religious. Everything they do is driven by a religious viewpoint. Their rise and their power, their burgeoning missile program, and remember, North Korea has developed what they have developed, and they are perhaps one of the handful of poorest nations on the planet. Iran, on the other hand, is a quite wealthy nation. They have lots of oil, lots of resources, and a very large population, 85 million people. And they have a huge ballistic missile program. They work with the North Koreans hand in hand, including on the nuclear side. And when the time comes, when they're ready, they will break out and become a nuclear power if we don't stop them. And they increasingly threaten the entire region. It has driven the Saudis more closely into our hands. They recognize the threat, but if we don't step up and confront Iran and make it clear that we will go to war to stop their nuclear program, and then if we don't make that clear, we're going to force a lot of things will happen, including the Saudis pursuing their own nuclear program. So you could see the Saudis reach out. They've got more money than God, and they can reach out to Pakistan. They could reach out to North Korea directly and say, hey, we'll flip you a few $1 billion. Send us a couple warheads. And the Saudis could become a nuclear state. If they will feel they have to if they in any way doubt the umbrella and the protective ability of the United States to keep them safe. So we're going to have a nuclear arms race going on in the Middle East. It's going to happen unless we confront Iran and make it crystal clear that we will stop them militarily the moment they head towards breaking out.
All right, that's going to bring to a close this segment. We're going to be back with our hot button topics. This is Inside the News. We'll be back.
You're listening to Wayman, Brunson, and Vernuccio, Inside the News.